Basic structure. There are 2 excise taxes if you don't provide coverage. This is not a mandate for employers, okay? You can choose not to provide coverage and pay the tax. But as we walk through it, we're going to focus on these 2 mandates. Some people call them the A penalty and the B penalty. We call them the sledgehammer tax and the tack hammer tax. That I think from a strategic standpoint, every employer that's subject to this, above 50 employees, will be better off making coverage available regardless of how much you pay for it. You might choose to pay nothing for it or little for it, than you would be to not offer coverage at all. Because if you make coverage available, you avoid the sledgehammer. That's a $2,000 time your full-time employee headcount tax. It's huge. No sledgehammer penalty applies if an MEC is minimum essential coverage. Basically, any employer coverage is offered to substantially all of the applicable large employers' full-time employees. Okay? Couple of key terms in there. Minimum essential coverage. Almost any employer self-funded plan or employer fully insured plan will qualify. Substantially all of the full-time employees, 95%. Okay? They decided that you don't need to cover everyone, and based upon notice and comment, initial notice that came out in 2012, a lot of employers said, you know, that $2,000 per head penalty is huge. What about the inadvertent error? We forget somebody. We forget to extend coverage. And they came out with a 5%, we call it a fudge factor, okay? You can not extend coverage to up to 5% of your full-time employees. How will pay or play impact employer-sponsored coverage? You know, some employers, when they looked at healthcare reform, said, oh, that's it. It's much cheaper for me to pay $2,000 per head than the subsidized coverage that I'm paying today at maybe $3,000 a head, okay? Let's take Alston and Bird. Our average cost of coverage for single coverage, $6,000 a year, $500 a month. That's the unsubsidized cost. It's what we pay in claims or we pay in insurance premiums. We, the firm, are subsidizing on average $3,000, and it's actually much higher, but we'll use $3,000 of that $6,000. What should we do? We can pay a pay or play tax of $2,000, or we can pay $3,000 like we are today. Knee-jerk reaction, $2,000 is less than $3,000, let's pay the two and be done. Then you look at it, okay? For that $3,000 we're paying today, our employees have coverage. They perceive value. They're happier than if we didn't provide coverage. Not only that, but for that $3,000 that we're paying today, that's deductible, okay? As a corporation, as a partnership, that $3,000 back out the taxes really is costing you less. And in fact, if the employee is paying their $3,000 as a pre-tax salary reduction, it's costing them less too. So that 3 is really 2 after you apply taxes. $2,000 penalty, employee has to go sign up for coverage on the exchange and pay for all of it out of their pocket versus a net cost of $2,000 after taxes. Now we're talking apples and apples. But let's look at that employee who signs up on the exchange, okay? That coverage on the exchange, even if it's the same carrier with the same doctor network, okay, and even if it's the same price, the employee has to pay for it with their after-tax income on the exchange. So for me, in Georgia, when I add up my federal tax rate, my state tax rate, my SECA, self-employed FICA version tax rate, it costs me $2 to pay $1. So if I pay that same $6,000 on the exchange, okay, it's going to cost me $12. What's the first thing I'm going to do? I'm going to go back to my employer and say, I need a raise. You took away my health coverage. I have to buy it on this exchange on an after-tax basis. So I think it's a no-brainer when you look at, should I pay now or should I play and continue to provide coverage. I will caveat that by saying in 2018, there's something called the Cadillac tax. Employers will have to pay or play and pay more. And I think 2018, when that comes around, that's another bridge to cross. But from now until 2018, when you look at whether it makes sense to pay or play, in almost every case, the employer is going to be better off providing coverage and playing, and then dialing up or down its subsidy.